Welcome. Welcome once again to Previews InFocus Live, co-sponsored by iMeet. We have an exciting program today. Young Moguls, the Wired Nation meets why, when, and where. And certainly we all are touched. Our lives are touched virtually every day by being connected and wired, if you will. But the young generation, I think, has a special edge, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. We'll have a panel discussion, and that will be followed by question and answers from our participants around the country and around the world. So as you have a question, please feel free to type it in, and we'll filter those in as we can, and then devote the last 10, 15 minutes of the program specifically to your questions. And I'd like to introduce the panel. We've got a great panel today. First off, we've got Lisa Lukes. Lisa is the Managing Director for HelmsBriscoe. Lisa, thank you for joining us. Do you have a few words you'd like to say first?
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me. I think this is a great topic. It's obviously something that we're all encountering and trying to adjust and learn how we need to adjust to going forward. So excited to talk about it further.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. And I think you said a key word there, learn. I think every day there's a new opportunity for being wired and connected, and it's a lifelong learning process, if you will. Next up, we've got Dalton Bennington. Hi, Dalton. Glad you're with us today. She's Managing Director of Meetings and Motivation, LLC, and we actually met in the Dominican Republic not too long ago. So welcome, Dalton. A few words?
Also, thank you for the opportunity. I think being wired is an honor and a pleasure. I wish I were an expert as most those younger than me, but certainly appreciate all the opportunities that we have in being more wired and being connected and utilizing social media to really drive engagement for our attendees and make meetings more experiential. So I'm excited.
Well, thank you. And I just want to mention also for our participants that the program can be seen later. It'll be on the websites for Prevue and iMeet. It's also available through iTunes and YouTube. So many opportunities to reconnect and connect throughout the many, many months for this program and other programs as well. Let's jump into our first question, because one of the things I think it's important to consider is how do we define the wired generation? Use of the new media, is it age, demographics? What are your thoughts? Lisa?
You know, I think I've thought about it a lot, obviously, since knowing I was going to be doing this, but I don't think we can really just limit it to a certain demographic. I think it needs to, it encompasses people that are addicted, if you will, or just can't live without their, whatever their form, iPhone or whatever it might be. It is to them like going to sleep and waking up every day. It is just a part of their everyday life and absolutely can't live without it. And I think that crosses over multiple generations. I think there's different degrees of it, which I'm sure we'll discuss as well. But to me, I don't think it's limited to just one demographic or one age group.
Let's drill down while I've got you for 1 minute. You say it's more than that. What do you mean?
Well,
more than one generation.
Well, I think, again, you know, I use an iPhone, and I am probably to a certain degree addicted to it. I, you know, check my mail all the time. I'm searching the web.
You're young.
Directions. Well, I'm not in the demographic age that you'd think for these for the wired generation. But you know, I mean, it's with me all the time, and I feel absolutely lost if I forget to bring it with me somewhere. And there's always, you know, can I live without checking my email for that half hour when I'm, you know, I've forgotten it? Of course I can, but it feels like you've absolutely completely forgotten something. And you know, I think there's so many of us that are at that stage and have gotten to that point, even though we might never have considered ourselves in the wired generation.
Dalton, do you have thoughts on the matter as well?
I do. I agree a lot with Lisa. I don't think it's a generation. If I could, I would change the word to era, from the standpoint that I think it's not just a particular age group. I think it's just the times that everyone has to really embrace technology. And I'm a bit of a geek, so I'll apologize for that, but in advance. I love statistics. And I thought it was interesting, based on the Incentive Research Foundation's 2012 Trends Report, there are 4.6 billion mobile users globally and 1.7 billion internet users. Nearly 50% of all U.S. online consumers are now advanced users of smartphones, social networks, and other emerging tools. That's up 32% since 2008. And that's kind of my background for thinking it's more of an era. Today, more than 1 in 10 Americans between the ages of 18 and 24 are what they call digital natives. And I tend to like that term more for the wired generation because they are more digital natives. They've never known anything else. They've been part of this age. So I thought that was interesting. One other statistics that I'll share, which comes from SITE, Society of International Travel Executives, is that 81% of companies are connected with their clients through social media, and 88% have profiles on Wikipedia, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. So I think more and more everyone's part of the wired generation.
Well, yes. In fact, I went to a medical futures discussion about a month and a half ago, and one of the things they were talking about is defining what it means to be human, because the the trajectory on being wired could mean us physically as near as 2030 to 2040. So very, very interesting. And certainly we see that in the younger generation, as you indicated, Lisa. They've never known anything else. And Dalton, you're likewise in the statistics indicate that. When you know nothing else, it becomes easier to just flow with being, quote, wired. We have polls that we do throughout the program, and our first program poll is, what types of new media are you currently using for your meetings? Social media off the chart at 92.3. Mobile apps, very interesting, 46. Text-based messaging, 61. Virtual seminars and webinars is about 46%. And event streaming, only 23%. But my gut tells me in the next 18 months or so, that's going to start rocketing. We actually just did a huge event streaming this last weekend, and we unannounced, unpublished, anything. We had over 50,000 people tuned in, and they were telling us anywhere between 20 and 60 people were packed by every screen watching. Wow. So that if you take that 50,000 and you start multiplying it out, now you're talking about some nice numbers. Given the response to that poll, any thoughts about how you go about positioning your meetings with your clientele for the wired generation? Lisa, let's start with you.
Well, you know, I think there needs to be a lot of uses of all of those tools. You can't limit it to just one. You need to rely on all of them. There's a time and a place for everything, but you need to be connected with them before, during, and after the meeting. I think it's no longer just at the meeting when we're connected with the attendees. There has to be a hashtag, there has to be an avenue and a resource for them to be able to interact and have the dialogue they're looking for. They want to feel connected, and you need to give them that opportunity to do that. And I was surprised with the final the number on that poll being as well, I guess I'm going to say as low as it was for the streaming. And I do agree with you. I think that is going to be something that's going to change tremendously as we go forward. I think there's so many meetings now and conventions that at least parts of them, some meetings, maybe not the entire convention, are streamed and available afterwards. So I think that'll just be growing as we go forward.
Yes, and I think also, as with all technology, the cost for doing the streaming is going to drop dramatically. Way back in the ancient days, I won't tell you how many decades ago, but we actually started the closed circuit global and sometimes open circuit global conferencing via broadcast and satellite. And those were very expensive, and now look what we can do for far less, and I think in the next actually year it's going to drop again. Dalton, your thoughts on the topic?
I remember when I first started in the industry and we used to look at how many payphone banks were outside the meeting room. Now it's more about how good is our cellular reception, because everybody absolutely has one. That probably ages me a bit. In reality, I think there's been a definite shift in how we plan meetings. In the last 5 years, I would make PowerPoint slides that said, please turn your phones off. Now my PowerPoint slides say, please keep your phones on. We need you to interact with our session. Creating business agendas that allow attendees to have a voice, to contribute to the topics that are being discussed, whether it's through audience polling or, text us the questions you want our executives to cover, or if you want more about this, let us know. Putting Twitter feeds up so people can engage during presentations, follow up afterwards. We do a lot of ROI measurement using telephones. After this session, tell us what you learned, what you liked most. When do you think you can apply what you learned? And asking people to send us emails from that perspective. 5 years ago, most companies banned social media. Now only a fourth of the companies are banning social media for their companies. So I think it's a great opportunity for us planners to really recreate what we did, add value, and kind of seize the audience and what they have on their minds and how we can best deliver educational content to them and at the same time glean their insights. And we've never really been able to do that before social media, at least inexpensively and as effectively as we can now.
And that's the key. It becomes very inexpensive to do for a survey or a focus group or anything. It used to be exorbitantly expensive, and many companies didn't do it because it was so expensive. And now it's almost instantaneous. I think one of the things that you both touched on a little bit is that actually you can use the new media to help form and structure the meeting almost on the fly as attendees respond to what's going on and what you ask them, how you poll, and so on and so forth. Have you ever done something that's very, very immediate based on their response versus using it more as a tool to structure the next meeting, let's say?
We have, absolutely. We've specifically to kind of answering questions from executives in business sessions of what they're looking for, having people text that in. We've also used cell phones as AVR tools, audience response systems, where people can text answers to questions similar to the polling, and use that data in our presentations as well.
Do you find, Lisa, that there's a difference between men and women in their approaches to using new media and being wired? I'm just curious.
I don't think so. And I'm going to quote a study as well. PCMA Education Foundation did a grant-funded research paper in May of this year, and they had 2,000 participants in that, and that was one of their findings, was that there was really no difference between males and females for the wired generation.
I would 100% agree. I think I don't think men versus Mars, women are from Venus applies at all in this case.
Well, yes, and one of the things is the highest growth of new media is in the more senior people, because they've come on, and once they get it, they're coming on in droves, males and females. Which media format do you use the most, Lisa?
Again, a little bit of everything, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for experimenting and seeing what works. And again, as HelmsBriscoe, we're involved in so many meetings and source thousands and thousands of meetings and help planners. So We really use all types of media. For us as a company, we even use all types. We're on every type of social media. We do webinars. We, take advantage of every outlet that there is.
Dalton, do you find you use one more outlet more than another?
Yes. I love Twitter for business. Most people think I'm a little crazy for that. I love Twitter. I have it linked with my LinkedIn, and I will say that I get a lot of feedback from my LinkedIn because of Twitter, but it's been fantastic for me. I was very active on Facebook. I still am from a personal perspective, but don't use Facebook as much from a business perspective. But love all kinds of technology, from my laptop, iPad, iPhone, iTouch, my Wii, my Xbox, pretty much any kind of little tech tool there is, I want to have it. I did, again, a little research, and I'm pretty consistent with this, but well, Facebook is the largest platform according to the Site Technology Survey that just came out a couple months ago. Twitter is at 65%. I'm sorry, LinkedIn is 65%. Twitter is only 28%. And then I thought it was interesting that only 24% of respondents use only one platform. So some more stats on what's popular.
And for our industry, one of our sponsors is iMeet, another great platform too. When you're talking about new media, is big more important in using new media, or does it matter, big or small meeting? You use it, in other words. Or is the smaller meeting meant to be more intimate versus, let's say, something that's 100, 200, 300 people?
I think it's contingent on the scope of the meeting and what you're trying to accomplish, and truly what your audience is. If you have an audience that's going to embrace it and engage, I don't think it requires a large audience. I think if you have a small audience, you have a breadth of tools that you can utilize in social media. If you have an audience of over 5,000, it can be overwhelming on some platforms, and you might want to stick to something like a Twitter that's more garnered for large volumes of data. So I think it's more contingent on what you're trying to accomplish with the goals and objectives of the meetings and who your audience is.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think ultimately determined by what your objectives are. But I think I would imagine that a smaller meeting probably has a little bit more flexibility. You may be able to change on the fly a little bit easier with a smaller meeting and try something different. Whereas, as Dalton said, a meeting of 5,000 people, you're not going to be able to pull that
off. Let's go to our next poll. Which of the following social media do you use most to interact with your attendees? And this plays off of Dalton's comment just a few minutes ago, and I think it'll be interesting to see. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, none, or other, and you can tell us. Just type in. Okay, the polling is coming in. And, oh, very interesting. We touched a buzzword there with Twitter, higher than I anticipated. Facebook's coming in at 40%. None, 23%, which is very interesting, up to 30% now, almost 31%. Facebook, Twitter staying at about 21%, Facebook about 50%, 42 to 50%, and none 28%. Very interesting. I'm curious with the people who say none, whether they're intending to make a change in the near future, or must be a unique meeting of some sort, or how that, why that is none in today's wired nation. Given the Facebook at 42%, can you tell us how you use Facebook in terms of meeting planning, if at all? Lisa?
You know, again, it's a great way to build anticipation and excitement beforehand. It can be little fun facts information. It can be stay tuned, we're X many days out, you know, and just to build some excitement and get people thinking about it. And it's an easy way to access those people and kind of get their attention and keep them excited, looking forward to it.
Agree with Lisa. Great pre-communication tools for meetings, allowing us to market different things that we're doing. A lot of times we'll publish kind of insider tricks and tips about a meeting, kind of launching different concepts to those who are following our Facebook page for a specific meeting. During a meeting, we found that our Facebook pages tend to go a little more stagnant. Some people post photos and interact with it, but it builds again after a meeting's over, kind of extending the life of the program, if you will, because attendees have developed a community before an event. Then as they're brought together in a destination, they tend to focus on kind of their face-to-face time and enjoying that. And then after the meeting, really reconnecting again and sharing their greatest experiences, what they liked most about it. And for me as a planner, it's great to see that camaraderie and that they've built, how they collaborate with each other. And I can glean a lot of insights on the meetings that I planned based on reading the feedback that I have there, because it's much more informal than our typical surveys that we do after the fact. So,
So connectivity and long tail become
very
significant.
Much so.
In your meeting and meeting development and meeting planning, actually, not just the meeting itself, but what happens afterwards. How do you measure the ROI, return on investment, as well as the ROE, which is the return on experience for your attendees in regards to the use of new media? And actually, it's not even new anymore, but that's how we'll define it. Wired media.
For me, us specifically, we've looked at it on how much interaction do we have, how many people are liking, sharing, and things like that of what we're posting utilizing social media. We've also done it through number of connections, people that have connected together through our specific postings that we've done. Personally, we have never linked ours back to website hits, but I know that that's something that some of my peers have done as far as tracking it. As far as ROE on experience, I think it's kind of what I said earlier on just the general enthusiasm that our delegates have in embracing it and sharing their ideas, sharing their photos, and kind of collaborating and working with each other. That being able to see that and have it naturally progress without really having to work very hard at it, other than giving them the tool and putting up the page and every once in a while putting up communications. But when it takes a life of its own and it's embraced, that's all the ROI I need.
No,
Lisa,
totally
any
agree.
comments?
Again, I think it comes down to what the objectives were of the meeting, and making sure that whether it's for wired generation or non-wired, because probably not all meetings are solely focused or sole attendees are wired of the wired generation. So it's ensuring that we're able to provide the information, the way of learning that all those attendees want to that they're able to learn from. And being able to get the ROI and the ROE from both of them.
Dalton, is there a difference in dealing with?
Not specifically. What makes the decision really is internet usage. If we are international, we need to make sure we'll more than likely provide Wi-Fi in meeting space for all attendees, which can be somewhat pricey, but not quite as pricey as having them utilize their cell phones. We might need to bring in an AVR provider, whereas if we're domestic, we can simply use a text-in feature with people's cell phones. So realistically, all the platforms pretty much work everywhere in the world. It's just a matter of how you can best take advantage of the internet to be able to host the different types of technologies that you're trying to use, and mitigate the high costs that come into play when you're dealing with people wanting to stay connected 24/7. And I don't think it's just in the meeting room, but also being able to talk to their families, being able to connect. One of the things that we found that's been very helpful is creating cyber cafes and having voice over IP telephones and Skype stations and things like that that help our attendees stay connected, because that's significantly important to them.
Yeah, no, again, absolutely agree. And I think bandwidth is just
Lisa,
a huge,
any other thoughts from
to pay
you?
attention to when international, domestic as well, but probably even more so international, because you're going to have more people, like Dalton said, Skype, FaceTime, wanting to stay connected, whether it's to their family or friends or work at home. And that's the most economical way for them to do that, as they're international. So there'd probably be more bandwidth being used at international meetings, just not even for the meeting itself, but just from the personal side of the attendee at that meeting.
Yeah, but it is something to consider. I remember I was at a conference recently, and they had a Twitter competition on who would be kind of the top tweeter, and one of our international attendees got on the news feed, and he was just basically like, I would totally win this contest, but I just found out my first tweet costed $300. And it's like, connect to the Wi-Fi. So I went to find him, and I actually got him connected on Wi-Fi, but it's just kind of funny that you really have to kind of think about what you're planning and how it's going to impact your users and what their knowledge level is and how they can do things, because it can get very expensive. Yeah.
And pretty quickly, let me ask you, do you hold meetings where you have in-person people at your meetings, but other people come in from around the world via
We've done
technology?
it via video conference, web conference,
work?
and my company, I was not there, so I'm sorry I can't speak too much about it. I saw the bills for it, but we also did a hologram, which from the attendee perspective is about the coolest thing that anyone had ever seen, because at the time, the CEO of the company was hologrammed into 6 different regions of the United States to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the company. It was supposed to be a 10-minute hologram that turned into a 20-minute hologram and more than quadrupled in cost. But yes, but they are very cool.
Holograms are expensive.
Huge.
So
huge wow factor.
Certainly it had a wow factor.
Exponential wow factor on the back end with all the financing, but definitely worthwhile. Bang for the buck. If you ever have the opportunity to do it, I would say definitely do it. Give yourself lots of time. With any technologies, there are certainly challenges, but really and truthfully, if you have an executive or a keynote speaker that you're desperate to have that can't physically be there in person, technology is at a place today that you can certainly make that happen. I know for the last 15 years I was in charge of video conference rooms and have upgraded them over the years, and I used to be scared every time walking into the room. Is everything going to connect? Is everything going to work the way it's supposed to? And now it's almost just seamless. College students are doing it. I think my neighbor's 5-year-old could probably do a webcast. So technology is available. You can do it. And it definitely allows you to have people present that can't be there physically.
The hologram is a very interesting opportunity. I just read that there's one country now, I think it's Iran, who's doing 3D vignettes to promote tourism and travel. So we're looking for new ways now to break that fourth wall, if you will, experientially, to give people that sort of, as much as you can, hands-on without actually being there, experience. And Smellorama is part of that. They've tried that in motion picture houses, etc. Lisa,
Well,
you're laughing. Any thoughts on breaking away?
What's the next step? What's out there? You know, what do we have to look forward to? And, you know, the hologram, I mean, 5-10 years from now, that might be the normal, you know, and this 3D video from Iran, you know, these are the next steps. This is where things are going, and, you know, so many that we don't even know about, and, you know, what's going to happen in the next 5 and 10 years.
What has been your biggest challenge in setting up an integrated, if you will, an integrative new media system for a meeting or with a company? Is there one area that always presents the biggest challenge in your setup continually, or is it always something new? My experience is always like the same thing. Somehow there's you get one thing right and then something else, you know, as you're working in the
For me, I would say, I don't know if it's the largest challenge, but it's probably one of the most consistent challenges, and it's getting easier, and that's getting IT, internal companies' IT departments to embrace it. A lot of the companies in the past, you know, Twitter has been kind of a no-go. The marketing department can tweet, but nobody else can. We don't. Companies don't want their water coolers being viral, and that's kind of what Twitter opens up. So getting buy-in to allow, you know, attendees that are at a meeting off-site to be able to use an application that they can't use at their desk, it's somewhat of a challenge. So kind of picking and choosing what social media platforms you can use, how you can engage your audience, and what's the best way to comply with company policy, and at the same time embrace the technology that's out there. In most, yeah.
Let me just interject 1 minute. Stephanie, who's one of our participants, says, "Amen."
It is. I remember when
obviously, this is a key point. Can you drill down on your process and how you bring bridge that desire and the company's mandates together to impact?
It's an evolution, not a revolution. It takes a lot of time. It's a matter of really showcasing the business objective of why Twitter was important. With one of my clients, I first got their buy-in to use it at a trade show, and we created a Twitter campaign where I essentially was the main person tweeting, but I took all relevant bits of data and started tweeting about the subject matter experts that we are in our booth to drive booth traffic. We owned the Twitter board. We were tweeting about every 15 minutes. We had the most traffic at our booth and the most brand recognition at the end of the trade show because of that. And it gave me the statistics to be able to share with the C-level executives and this, you know, our CIO at the time, to say, this is how Twitter can impact a trade show. Imagine what it can do for our incentive program. And then I leveraged the audience of our incentive program by saying, if we've got the top 10% of performers in our company, we should be able to trust them to use a tool appropriately. And, you know, we are off-site. We're in a different place. People are using their cell phones. If you don't think that they have Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook on their cell phones, you're sadly mistaken, because they do. You know, you don't necessarily have to turn it on all of their desks right now, but certainly allow us to use that, allow us to teach it and showcase what it can do. And they agreed from a standpoint that it wasn't something that everyone was tweeting the company's hashtag, so it's there, but creating the event hashtag, allowing people to tweet from it, allowing them to interact with it, using Facebook, which this particular company had Facebook open for all employees, but did not have Twitter. But in its first use, everyone started really seeing how important this could be. And that's when we started doing like text and AVR and kind of incorporating a lot more things. But it took what could have been a potential career limiting step to stand behind it and do it. But sometimes you have to go on that risk. Do research. Think about how you can use it and how it will be valued in your organization. And if there's significant value, then you have the ability to sell it, and it's not career limiting. It's basically career promoting, because they're seeing you as someone that can leverage an inexpensive tool that drives engagement. And if you want to get real specific, then engagement brings you, higher retention for your companies. It saves the company money, and hopefully you talk about your company and promote more people from coming in. So in general, it becomes a big win-win. Sorry for rambling.
Absolutely. No, that was very good, very insightful. But it sounds like one of the keys to making that happen in the first place is to create a buffer, if you will. Remove it directly from the company by setting up the event website or the event hashtag or whatever it might be, so that the exposure for the company
yes and no.
is perhaps lessened.
There's that perception, but in the reality is, if you don't want it to be on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, don't post it, or the New York Times, I think is the adage. It is there. If people want to find it, they can find it and see it. You want to create an environment where people are enjoying it and it's a very positive experience. I kind of saw a question that I think popped up too for one of our participants about how do you deal with something that, yeah. If people post something negative, it's there, it's how they think. Right. The best thing you can do is to respond to it in the least obtrusive way. If you can, directly respond to it and address it and move on from it, great. If it's an individual that you can identify, it certainly you want to respond to it using social media so everyone sees that you have responded to it. You don't want to hide from it. But it is a matter of kind of following back on with the specific person that's posting something negative and kind of, hey, why are you doing this? And resolve the issue as best you can.
Is that something that you feel as a meeting planner that you are responsible for, or is it something
that depends on what the issue
with the company and then the company?
Really both. For me as a meeting planner, I'd love to say that I was always the one person owning social media. The fact is it takes a team. I can't be putting speakers on stage, controlling show, and watching Twitter feeds and responding to it. So a lot of times it's something that I would refer to our marketing department, PR department, and they would oftentimes bring in the interns. So the younger folks to at least put postings out there. But depending on what the situation is, the negative situation, it's a matter of how concisely and most effectively kind of shut down the situation by responding to it in the most positive light that you possibly can. And if you need to take it offline, certainly take it offline. And most people that have been utilizing social media are used to that. It's there. But the quicker you can shut it down, definitely the better, and use the resources that you have to do it as effectively and the less obtrusively as possible to your other attendees and delegates, because you don't want them getting upset.
Exactly. Lisa, any thoughts to pick up on Jessica's question about negative postings, etc.?
And whoever it is, it gets assigned to, there has to be somebody that's monitoring it at all times. And, something with posts like that, or even with group emails, you just need to be careful that it doesn't become a continuous, back and forth, and like Dalton said, you try to respond and you try to just put an end to it when you respond. But if you know that person, you want to try to think ahead, and what's that person going to do when when this is posted and when we write this, and are they going to fight back? You don't want it to be a continuous just conversation that keeps on going.
Let me encourage our participants around the country and around the world to feel free to write in your questions for our panel. We'll continue our discussion, but as you write in, we'll filter those questions into our discussion. negativity is always a challenge, and bridging the needs of the meeting with those of the company and company's goals and objectives. Have you had on the other side of the coin a way of measuring the positive impact of the connectivity due to the new media as a result of bringing these people together, and perhaps new ideas developing as a result in the company? Because a lot of research has been done, whereas companies that work in isolation by department or committee have less innovation than those that bring together different departments and people to talk with one another, and new ideas and new concepts and new products come about as a result of that. Have you tracked that? Do you know if there's any of that going on as a result of some of the meetings you put together with the new media?
Not specifically. I know of some one-off examples where social media has fostered relationship. Well, a meeting has fostered relationships. Specific example. Let me think. We held a program in Las Vegas where we created teams by the company had 9 different companies internally, and they really wanted to start sharing leads between the different companies because they all had some clients that are the same, some clients that aren't. And in order to kind of create more market penetration was to have them share leads, which often didn't happen. Because of the meeting and then subsequently through social media and the camaraderie that was fostered, there were more leads that were shared. And I know of 2 successful wins for the company that were over $1 million accounts that became, $5 million accounts because of the camaraderie and the connections and things that happened through the meeting, and ultimately with the ability for them to stay communicated more socially and less formally through the company's normal communications channels. I can't say that, I can't say it's, that did it, that one thing, but I think it's creating that whole, environment, that whole sphere of what people can do and how they can connect and how they can collaborate that becomes exponential to the company in terms of the relationships that are built. In that specific case, it was millions of dollars. So,
absolutely, Dalton.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that is bankable. I mean, more than bankable. I mean, that is an incredible example and very impactful. Let's move along quickly because the questions are coming in. Lisa, next question is from Bonnie. Are you building apps for specific meetings or using already developed apps? And then quickly, Dalton, and then we'll move to the next question. They're coming in fast.
We work with so many different companies. We
Lisa.
Work with so many different accounts that it is specific to what they want to do. Many of them are doing both. They're building new apps themselves. They're creating new apps for new meetings, or they're using already developed apps. It depends, I think, on how technologically advanced the organization, association, company is, and their level that they're willing to go to try new things. Exactly.
And what about the cost for developing apps? And who bears that cost? Is it on the planner's side of the budget, or does it become part of the company's side of the budget? And who owns it? Who owns the copyright on that app?
I can make it very quick. We have not jumped into the app world from a planning perspective. I've been part of companies that have apps and help them develop segments of it, but nothing specific for a meeting.
And one other question, and I don't know if either of you have dealt with this in developing apps and using music specifically. You have the copyright issues there too, and the ASCAP, BMI, CCAP, Harry Fox rights that go along with any use of music in meetings, but also through new media. Pedrek, I believe that's the pronunciation, says, great presentation, folks. Thank you so much. The question is, what software would you recommend to filter or censor what tweets, postings are shown in a live meeting? If they need to be censored, how do you do that, etc.?
From our standpoint, we never really censored them. We just
Either.
used regular Twitter for people to use that. As far as platforms for us, as those that are creating the questions and putting it out there, Hootsuite is one of my favorites. I love that you can, whatever device I have in my hand, my account is right there. And I can have multiple accounts, whether it's me personally or my company or the specific meeting. Being able to search hashtag feeds all in one specific place. And this isn't a Hootsuite commercial, this is just a personal thing. TweetDeck is also great, but tend to definitely use Hootsuite more in depth. I know Matt Bray will love me for plugging TweetBot for iPhones. I think that's one of his favorites. But there's all different tools that you can use. You just find the one that works best for you. As far as censoring it, I don't have an example, but I can certainly look into it if you'd like me to.
That might be a very interesting follow-up, because one of the things we like to do with InFocus Live is develop and further this community that comes together for these programs.
Sorry, I don't really have much I can add to that.
Lisa.
I would have to defer to my my marketing and IT teams for that one.
One of the things that has come up is something that both of you raised indirectly, and that is there's a plethora of apps and new technologies and new variations on technologies. How do you go about finding out, A, about new opportunities, 2, trying them out or seeing if that's really something appropriate for the use of your meeting, and 3, applying them? Because, I mean, every day there's another, you know, who knows, scores of new apps, new this, new that, and it's the best thing, the greatest thing, next thing is the best thing. How do you deal with the constant change? Change is the norm now.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, I don't
Lisa,
know.
Go ahead,
change
Lisa.
That quickly is always good, and sometimes you just have to use what you have and what you know and is trusted. A live meeting with a large attendance is not always the forum where you want to try something new and see if it's going to work or not. So, I think there's a lot of networking and talking to people and, good old-fashioned reviews of what works and what have people tried. And if you are going to jump in and actually try something new, jump in and try it first and really, debug it as much as absolutely possible, because you really want to limit your exposure when you're running these things live, and you have to determine when is the best way and time to try that. And maybe it's a small meeting and a board meeting as opposed to a large annual convention.
Threefold question: how do you learn about it, decide about it, and apply it? Learning about it, peers, talking to your friends, MPI, SITE, IRF, different organizations, TED, there's all kinds of opportunities out there. Making decisions about it, first and foremost, it's not one size fits all. You have to kind of look at the tool, what it does, how much time is it going to take to do it, what are the benefits, what value do you see that you're going to get it, and then applying it in, you test it, you kind of mold it, find a safe environment for you to kind of work the kinks out of it before you actually launch it in front of everybody. But it's really kind of, making the decision on what works for you. I'm a fan of Twitter. Majority of my friends are not. They're like, that's just crazy. How do you have time to read all that? And the truth of the matter is I don't really read everything, but I read the things that I want to read, and I find that to be beneficial. Love LinkedIn, love Facebook, but haven't really embraced Foursquare. Love that Facebook, you can check in places. That's a little bit more easy to do. Pinterest, it's out there. I know a lot of people are using it, haven't delved into it, haven't delved into blogging. I mean, the greatest thing about it is there's just such an opportunity for everyone to find what interests them the most and how they can leverage it to engage their audiences. And, you know, the world's your oyster. You can decide how you want to embrace it and what you want to do with it and how successful you'll be with it.
Is there a difference between using new media for the young moguls who are in the luxury market category, your CEOs and hotshot, you know, young wired attendees, versus those who are perhaps middle management or others for non-incentive?
I don't necessarily know if it's specific to the market, but more so the budget that each of those individual has and what types of technology that you can implement. Obviously, a mid-market type of property probably has more of a mid-market budget, isn't going to be able to really afford holograms, where in the luxury market they more so can. At the same time, if it's the luxury market and you're in Nevis, you're probably not going to have a hologram. So I think it kind of right.
Unless you have volume. Unless you have a volume.
It depends on how much infrastructure you want to bring in.
Yeah.
I think it's more around budget and imagination and, you know, who your audience is on what you can do. Because I think at all levels of organizations, you have people that have embraced technology and you have people that run kicking and screaming away from it. And I think it's, you know, as a planner, it's an opportunity for us to, you know, embrace the people who really love it, have them help out the kickers and screamers, and have them all work together and find kind of that equal ground. Because as much as we want to stand on stage and tell somebody, you know, okay, this is a hashtag, this is how you do it, it's much easier if there's somebody sitting next to them that's going to say, hey, this is how I do it, and kind of help them through it. And I know. Yeah, you know, set your table so that you have a little bit of everyone, and let them help each other. I mean, you know, I have to give credit to a 23-year-old PR person that taught me Twitter, because I had a Twitter handle for years and for about a year and a half, and never used it. And then she kind of said to me, she goes, well, you know, if, you know, Twitter is just, you get to read things that you're interested in. And it made me think of, and I always use this example, but it makes me think of NPR, and the smartest people I know listen to NPR. I personally don't like talk radio. But I'm interested in the top 10 things that NPR thinks is important in a day. And I love that I get it in 180 characters or less, because if it's not interesting, I don't care. They haven't really wasted much of my time. So from that perspective, it was like, oh my God, all these things that I'm interested in, I can learn about in 188 characters or less. And if it's not interesting, I can do nothing with it. Or if I like it, I click and I get more information. And it just kind of opened my eyes a little bit. So thank you to
Dalton, thank you so much. Well, we've had a great discussion today, very interesting. We've really just scratched the surface. There's so much to talk about being wired and the young moguls, because it keeps changing, as we've talked about earlier in this program, what it means to be wired, how to wire your meetings, and how to pay for it all and make it effective for your ROI and ROE. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your being here today. This is Lisa Lukes, who is with HelmsBriscoe as Managing Director, and also Dalton Bennington. Thank you so much, Dalton, for being with us. She's Managing Director for the Meetings and Motivation LLC company. I want to thank you so ever much for joining us today. Join us next month for episode number 4. Keep the bounce in your step, staying healthy and fit during meetings and events. A good topic for the new year and starting the year off right. So thank you for joining us. I want to remind you that you can see this program and other programs on the web addresses for Prevue magazine, for also iMeet, and it's available in iTunes as well as YouTube. Thank you so much.